All right, we're back. It is Monday night. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Lots of things going on out there in the Twitter sphere and the broader macroeconomics, which we will get into tonight. And then obviously we will run down the questions again. I always forget to say this, so I'll just say it right up front. If you do enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm and the channel. We are on YouTube, Facebook, X, and over here on TikTok also. All right, so where are we at? Well, things are starting to get spicy here. So you've got Trump, kind of whipsawing the market, coming out saying, I don't know if y'all have ever seen that meme where it's like, I'm dead, I'm alive, I'm running around. Like, that's kind of how I feel like things are going. Iran's coming out saying that they're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz completely. And you got, Trump basically threatening to blow up their power plants. And then he's coming out with another tweet this morning saying, we're good. We're going to give it a 5-day deal. And we're probably going to negotiate our way out of this. You got the UN stepping in, applying pressure. There's a lot of things, whipsawing oil and the rest of the market at the moment. Bond yields continue to escalate, though. They are not budging. You're going to continue to see those rise. People are concerned. And so, there's also risk appetite. We saw $900 billion move into the stock market this morning off the news that, there could be some resolution to this conflict. Those people are selling bonds, rotating that capital over. And, you're going to continue to see bond yields climb. The yen is still at the top end of the range. It's down a little bit at 158. But if we do continue to see the inflation there in Japan rear its head, I haven't looked at oil this evening, priced in yen. We were back down around 14,000 yen per barrel, which is, off of the high of about 16 to 17,000 just about a week ago. And so the inflation's still there. Whether they, put the reserves out onto the market, they're going to have to eventually take some monetary action here. They're going to have to raise interest rates, and that is going to cause the reverse carry trade to unwind. The Fed held interest rates, and so did the Bank of Japan on both of their meetings, which, kind of prolongs this. It kicks the can a little bit further. What I think really the holdup is on all of this is we need domestic demand for treasuries if we're going to let this unwind. And in order to do that, they have to come to some resolution on the yield for these stable coins. Otherwise, the banks aren't going to be launching them at scale, which is what's going to drive enough demand to be able to shore up the bond market. So we need some type of resolution on that. We had Cynthia Loomis post the yield sign over there on Twitter toward the end of last week, basically insinuating that they are going to come to some type of resolution on that in the near term. Whether the Clarity Act gets passed in totality or not, I don't know. But I don't think it matters a whole lot for XRP and a few of the other digital assets at this point. You have the CFTC and the SEC coming out listing joint language and how they're going to be regulating the space, kind of working in lockstep, basically saying that the majority of these digital assets at this point are commodities in and of themselves. Just the contracts on top of those and how you're using these assets, which would be under the SEC's purview and listed as securities. So with that actual framework, I do think that you're going to see actual, adoption of these networks and protocols. I think that these assets are going to be listed on banks' balance sheets in the near future. You have the OCC coming out saying that, according to them, we'll see if this is true or not, as of April 1st, you could see banks holding these digital assets on their balance sheets. That's a big, big deal. We're not that far from that. We're only, call it 9 days from potentially banks and institutions starting to adopt these digital assets. And we heard David Schwartz say at XRP Community Day that for XRP in particular, the reason that they've had, some apprehension in holding that asset is the volatility. So I think things need to be a high, stable value before they're actually willing to do that. So we'll see what transpires over the next week or two here. We did have Solana and many other large accounts on Twitter come out yesterday evening and say this is going to be a big week, that they are hearing things from Congress, regulators, and other sources, basically insinuating that we could see some volatility in the market this week. With all of the macro events currently, on the docket here, I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibilities, but we will see, what the week holds. It's only Monday. So, and we'll be back Wednesday like we always are, run down everything for you guys. So that's the state of the market. That's where macro is. We'll go ahead and jump into the questions here. And again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to come hang out with me and ask them. We got Nature Boy. He says, do 401ks still make sense in 2026? That's an interesting question. Free money is free money. Okay. So if you work for an employer and they're willing to do a match on your 401k, I mean, I'm going to take it. I would invest as much as they would match, You are pretty limited in what you can invest in with your 401k. And it's basically going to be how they direct it, whatever your employer is investing in. You can do a solo 401k. You can do a Roth solo 401k if you're self-employed. You could set up a separate 401k for yourself. These are tax-deferred accounts. They are for retirement. The benefits are going to be post 59 and a half years old. So I think it's person dependent. I think it's dependent on where you are in your life, what your plan is, your financial plan with your CPA, your accountants, your attorneys, and your financial advisor, and what you're looking to do. I think a lot of people would do well to have a portion of their investments outside of qualified accounts. Qualified accounts, again, kind of limit what you're able to do. But if you are getting a match from your employer, the other thing is you can't really do much with it until you leave that employer. So if you had a 401k at a previous employer and you wanted to roll that to a self-directed IRA, I think that there's great options for that. And especially if you got the match while you were working for that previous employer, that might be a good option. So, look at that. And it's pretty easy to do wherever they were holding that 401k. You should be able to rotate that into another qualified account and convert that over. So that's my 2 cents. I think it makes sense for some people. And then, for other people, probably not so much. Sean says, Jake the Muss. Okay. Thank you for the kind words. He says, seeing reports Swift is going live with blockchain tech in June. XRP has taken years to build. How can Swift do this so quickly? They're going to have to adopt other protocols and networks to be able to sell that value. Their solution's an EVM-based one. Lena, I think, is what they've called that. Look, I actually put out a video about Swift and its adoption of these protocols in order to be able to settle transactions probably 6 or 8 months ago. And I talked about it would be an amalgamation of multiple protocols in order to be able to do this in a secure way. So you need an oracle, you need cross-chain interoperability, you need security, and you need settlement. And there's also data and information that gets passed between those two counterparties, just like they do today. But if that was on blockchain, it would be much more efficient. So all of those components, you might have a full stack of a couple different blockchains that actually allowed them to settle real time. And I think that that's likely what they're going to utilize. I don't think it's going to be one. There will be, I think XRP will benefit the most because of the settlement on the back end of that and the volume and the value that will move over that network to be able to settle between those counterparties. They could also use Corda for private permissioned ecosystems for each one of the banks to be able to settle through. It's going to be a routing service is really what it comes down to, but it all needs to talk to one another, and you're probably going to have multiple protocols providing that data and information between each other. And that's why Chainlink's involved. I think Hedera could be involved, and the XRP all at the same time for actual settlement for Swift. So again, just one guy's opinion. I'm not the end all be all. There's going to be people that tell you that there's, one solution for everything. I tend to be a little hesitant on that. I think everything's going to play its role, and each one of those blockchains has a different core component to it that provides the most value, and I think that's where they will be leveraged. We got Weird Kids TV. It's an interesting name. They say, is it possible for the reverse carry trade to get pushed to 2027 or later, or is that a no? I think you asked me this in the Mastermind earlier today, and I said, not in my opinion. I do believe that the reverse carry trade will play out this year in 2026. They've continued to kick the can. If you're looking at, and the reason I say that is the yield curve there in Japan. So if you look at the 10-year, we're currently at levels that we haven't seen since October of 1998. Like 30 years ago was the last time we saw interest rates this high in Japan. And they're only going to move higher. The inflation in their economy, they're going to have to be able to combat that. They're going to have to raise interest rates. They need to pull themselves out of stagflation and the problem that they've had over the last couple of decades. And they have economic growth. So they're going to be able to sustain higher interest rates. And because of that, they're really kind of backed against a wall at this point because they need to raise their interest rates for their own economy. But if they do that, it causes catastrophic issues for the rest of the world. It causes all of that money to flood back to Japan in a very quick manner to be able to repay those loans. So, I don't think that they can kick the can any further. I do think that that will happen this year in 2026. Honest Aim says, good to see you. He says, Mr. Legacy and the Tea Lady. No questions. Just want to express our respect and gratitude for your leadership, vision, relationship building wisdom, strong morals, and perseverance. See you both soon. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know that I embody all of those things. I try to, but nobody's perfect. But I'm doing my best, and I appreciate the support. Divine says, "Hey Jake, God bless you and the fam. Are you able to recommend a company in Canada that's similar to DAG? We work with Canadians. Don't have any issue. We have counterparties there in Canada that we work with in order to be able to do the tax and legal and estate planning. But we can absolutely manage the digital assets that you have there at Anchorage. We can, provide you access to a lot of the institutional products that we're curating. And we're going to be international. We already have probably, I'd say 13% of our client base is international. The majority of our clients are obviously domestic to the US. But that being said, we're going to open an office in Dubai or somewhere in the UAE, maybe Abu Dhabi, maybe Dubai. I think we're leaning toward Dubai. Also looking at Singapore or Korea for later this year in Q4. We should have our New York office open midsummer. So continue to expand and continue to partner with great people there in Canada. So just reach out, just email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. And we are happy to connect you with whatever resources you need there in the 51st state. Rhonda, she says, hey, Jake, can you elaborate on your tweet that XRP could either appreciate fast or remain suppressed? This is the first I've heard you or anyone mention it could possibly be suppressed at its current price. Appreciate you. It's absolutely suppressed at its current price. So because of the dynamics that are available in the market, this is what allows them to do it. They can buy over the OTC desk in the dark pools, and that volume doesn't move across the exchanges and therefore doesn't impact price. And they can sell onto the open market to drive the price down. So, the whole market cap of crypto is $3 trillion, less than $3 trillion. It doesn't take a whole lot of money to move markets in crypto. Large institutions manipulate the market all the time. And for better or for worse, right? I think that you guys will think it's for the better when they manipulate it up. But when they're manipulating it down, they're doing so that they can buy at lower prices. And so for the ETFs, great. Yeah, they're accumulating more at lower price points. And the more money that flows into the ETF, the more XRP they can accumulate before it does appreciate, right? So same thing for the DATs. We've got Evernorth, coming live here, hopefully by the end of Q3. We should have an approval from the SEC at some point in the next 9-10 days. Their target was by the end of Q1, so coming to the end of that pretty quickly. They did file that S4 last week, so I would expect that the SEC should approve them in short order. That will continue to drive demand for XRP outside of the ETFs. That'll be another structured company acquiring more XRP, raising debt, and doing other things to be able to deploy that into DeFi protocols and seed other things on chain. Really excited for that one. But they will also be able to do the same mechanism. They'll be able to sell on the exchanges, buy through the OTC desk, and accumulate more. So that's how it works until the OTC desk and dark pools dry up and there's not enough there for them to purchase, or there's more demand than what's available, and that the volume has to move to exchanges. We'll continue to see the price being pushed down. Ripple did liquidate a portion of the XRP that they released from the escrow toward the beginning of the month. Each month they release $1 billion. They normally re-escrow $700 million. $300 million of that moved to a wallet. Apparently close to $200 million of that was moved out of that wallet and sold onto the market. So that's XRP, not dollar value. So that's also some sell pressure onto the market that causes the price to stay down. But I do think once they uncap that and flip it around the other way, it'll be very similar to silver. There was a lot of people that know that JP Morgan and many other people were naked shorting silver and spoofing the market for an extended period of time. They still do it. And that's how they make a bunch of money, and there's fines. They get slapped on the wrist, but they make so much money doing it that it doesn't really matter to them. They don't even get fined in crypto at this point for doing it because there's really no regulatory body that sits over them that makes sure that there's not manipulation in the market. But all that being said, I think that they'll flip around when they need to on XRP. They'll drive demand and they'll push the price substantially higher in a very short period of time. At least that's my thesis. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out of your evening to come hang out with me. We got Wayne, Big Wayne. What's going on, brother? He says, is Japan willing to destroy their own economy to prop up our market? The U.S. is obviously bribing them by supplying them oil to hold rates. When the bubble pops, I will be hedged in XRP and in puts. I like how you're thinking, Wayne. Again, I think that there's a little bit more to it. We need domestic demand for treasuries, and until they've solved the yield piece on the Genius Act, I think they're going to continue to kick the can. I do think that they could force their hand on that if there was a systemic event that required us to soak up that demand very quickly. They would probably come to a resolution very quickly on whatever the regulation was going to be, just like they did with COVID. I mean, they pushed stuff through in like 3 days when there's enough pressure, right? So I think that could end up being the situation that we find ourselves in. But I do think that that's the missing piece for them to move forward on everything. And obviously, to your point, the U.S. and Japan are working in lockstep in order to be able to push this to whatever point is necessary to make sure that we can de-risk the bond market and stabilize that when all of this unwinds. 7U says, someone in the mastermind said Basel III and XRP licenses are needed before XRP settles stock. Is that true? Does XRP need anything beyond the reverse carry trade for a high price? So Basel III is going to require everything to be backed and audited for the gold and commodities and other markets. In order to actually be able to enforce that, you need it on chain. So I don't think so. I think you're probably going to see the tokenization of the stock market prior to the tokenization of the commodities market and the implementation of Basel III. It could all be very closely together. I do think once the dominoes start falling, they will be accelerate. They will accelerate at a faster rate once we do see the Bank of Japan raise interest rates. But yeah, I outside of that circumstance playing out, I don't see another catalyst that could push XRP's price to the levels it needs to be. But then, to your point, we need the implementation of it to be able to settle markets and have sustained volume over the network to hold that price at a high stable value. So that's why I'm saying I think they'll push it high, and then a lot of those things will fall very quickly after in order to be able to drive the volume over the network. and be able to maintain a high stable value XRP. AWAGS says, Carbon 2 member here. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the mastermind. He said, thanks to the mods. Rob, respectfully, has been a major blessing. These guys and gals don't get enough credit for all that they do. I would second that. Shout out to the mods, everybody there in the mastermind that does all the work that they do on a daily basis. That our community would not be what it is without our moderators. So truly humbled and grateful to have them there in the group. A lot of them are OGs. They've been around for a long, long time. Like I said, if we didn't have really good people that believed in the mission and wanted to work with us and support what we're doing, none of this is possible. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to all the people over the years that have believed in us and the support that we continue to get. It does mean like a lot more than you guys really know. And on the mastermind side, we have the little banner up here. If you do want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you. All you got to do is use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. You can just go to beyondbroke.com and use that code and get you the first month for $2 there in the group. No contract, try it out, cancel at any time. But we have over 16,000 people that continue to stay there in the group because of the value that we do provide. So I would say I try to provide more value in that group than I've ever gotten from any other mastermind group that I've ever been a part of. We have a call. If you're in the highest level of the mastermind, if you're in Carbon 3, there's a call every single day that you could join and participate in. Hard work, play harder. Work hard, play harder. Geez. They say Japan is acting like there is no issue with their interest rates. They are holding. They are continuing to talk about interventions in the currency market and in oil. So I wouldn't say that they're acting like there's no issue. There's definitely an issue, and at some point that's going to become apparent, and they're going to have to act in order to be able to save their own currency. Mr. Johnson, Rick, he says, with all the ships and troops going into the PG, how can you be assured of the reverse carry trade happening? What is the Iranians' cry? What is the Iranians' cry, uncle? And all this ends fast. It doesn't matter at this point. The damage is already done. The Strait of Hormuz was the linchpin. There's already huge logistical issues, and there will be for months, even after they open up the strait. And it'll just continue to compound the longer it stays closed. So I think they're backed into a corner. I think that they know that. I think it's too little too late. And sometimes things take a little bit longer to play out, but that doesn't mean they're not happening. We've got Rick Johnson again. He says, explain the Mastercard Ripple deal and its benefits. So we talked to Mastercard in February of 2024 in Dubai. And we talked about a lot of different things, a lot of different products and solutions that they had at the time that they just hadn't rolled out. They have crypto rails, they can settle. They need a new way to be able to compete at scale, and it actually increases their margins. To be able to settle through XRP or XLM or these other networks, they need redundancy in the payment channels where they can route them for the cheapest execution and fastest latency, right? XRP does a great job of both of those things. So does XLM, so does HBAR, Solana also. So they have interoperability with all of those networks, and they're going to settle through whichever one's going to provide them the most liquidity and fastest settlement time for the least amount of fees. Because they're still going to be charging in consumers, but the volume of payments that they'll be able to process will actually pick up exponentially. So they'll actually make more money even if they reduce their fees. And they know if they don't do that, they're going to be disintermediated. So that's why they partner with Ripple and many other large providers out there to tackle payments and be able to scale their system. Right now, Mastercard and Visa both process about 30,000 transactions per second. Which is a lot. It's more than the total TPS that's sustainable on the XRPO. There's a few other networks that can scale to that much. But that's why there's redundancy. And then if you have payment channels and you also have an implicit or explicit subnet on the XRPL, the TPS would be effectively unlimited. So, partnering with Ripple for that makes a big deal or makes a lot of sense. And then separate of that, Mastercard also has technology to be able to trace all the transactions across basically any blockchain back to the origin and who mined it or purchased it on whatever exchange globally. So if you think you're evading taxes or they don't know you have it, you're not. Mastercard has the full product in order to be able to find that. So they had, like I said, in 2024, they already had a full suite of crypto products that they just hadn't rolled out that we went over with them. And I do think that those will be hitting the market in the not too distant future. We've got A. Seidler, messed that up. They say, thank you for being a lighthouse on the shore, Jake. Do you think that California is going to favor us more than the banks? CA, do you think CA is going to favor us more than the banks? Maybe you mean Canada. I feel like it's going to be everyone leaves the table a little unhappy. Oh, the Clarity Act. CA could be a bunch of different things. Sorry. Favor us more than the banks. I don't think they can stop the fintechs. You've seen X and Facebook or Meta and a lot of the other large social media platforms aggregate a ton of MTLs or money transmitter licenses in order to be able to basically launch their own stablecoin and effectively transmit payments. I do think that you're going to earn a yield on it. I think that they'll probably follow that side of the fence. I think they're going to come to some type of resolution where they both make money on it. The original Genius Act was, this is how it was proposed, or at least what I heard went on. The negotiation was, look, we can either box these fintechs out, but you guys don't get the yield and you've got to pass it to the people that are buying your stablecoin, or you guys can keep the yield and then they can launch stablecoins too. And so they decided, all right, well, we want to keep the yield, the 5% or the 4% we're going to make on the treasuries. And so we'll let them do it too. And now they're coming back to the table. Whoa, never mind. We're going to lose all these deposits. We didn't realize that was going to be the case. So we want to retract that. We want it to go back the other way. Nah, it's too late now. So, I kind of think they've already kind of made their bed and they're going to have to lay in it because they wanted to be able to keep the yield on the stable coins that they launched for their internal operations. And if those stable coins make their way out of that environment somewhere else and they're put to work and somebody else is holding it, then what's to stop you from earning yield by holding somebody else's stable coin that's being put to work or rehypothecated? That's what they're fighting over. So I think Coinbase is probably going to end up winning out on that. And I do think that a lot of the large fintechs and social media platforms want it to go that way as well. Mr. Johnson already did that one. Let's see here. Oh, wow. Bunch of super chats right in a row here. Got Travis XRP. He says, in your view, does the Bank of Japan have a better shot at raising interest rates by emergency meeting compared to a scheduled meeting? Thanks for everything that you do. So it would be unprecedented. Just full clarity. It has never happened before that the Bank of Japan has had an emergency meeting. They've always, handled their monetary policy on a regular cadence. That's assured the market that things are going to move a certain way. They tend to provide, forward guidance on what they're going to be doing before they come into that meeting. The only way to have the market wrong-footed would be an emergency meeting. We've seen the Fed do this in the past, and they've had to make aggressive moves in those emergency meetings that are, outside of the forecast of what they've provided to the public. And that's what's caused significant volatility in markets. So for the reverse carry trade to unwind, I do think that it's probably going to be an impromptu or emergency meeting in a situation where they're backed in a corner and they're going to have to act quickly. I don't think that it is going to be at this scheduled meeting that they're going to tell you ahead of time that they're going to raise, 50 bips. Because if they did, then the market would, price that in, and there would be a lot of issues. Let's see here. Presto says, Jake, when you post, I don't know if y'all heard or not, but apparently this is a big week. Would you please elaborate, or at least for the Carbon members? So, I got in the chat earlier today and I talked about this on the live. So every Monday we do have a digital asset discussion, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I addressed this on that, but I have heard some rumblings, some rumors that things could happen this week. The tweet that I made was not predicated on that. It was predicated on the other people tweeting that they believe it's going to be a big week. You had Solana, you had Axelar, you had MoonPay, you had a bunch of other people over there on Twitter stating that this is going to be a big week. So that's why I stated, in the tweet, I don't know if you heard or not, but apparently this is supposed to be a big week. So I've got my rumors. We'll see if those play out or not. I'm not, holding my breath on anything. If you want to put your tinfoil hat on, though, I know you guys like when I do this, so I'm going to go there real quick. Tomorrow is 985 days since XRP got its clarity on July 13th, 2023. Does anything happen? I don't know. Interesting, though. If you want to go look at Ripple's account, how many people do they follow? 985. Brad Garlinghouse follows 589 people. Maybe there's a there, maybe it's nothing, but we will see tomorrow. Longshots says, grateful Carbon 1 member, could they be holding the reverse carry trade back until global strategic oil reserves are depleted to a specific level? Sure. Any effort to restructure power, in an effort to restructure power, wealth, and market influence, and effect to dissolve the IEA. I think we're watching and witnessing real time the death of the petrodollar. I think that's a lot of what's going on in the region over there. The U.S. is still trying to control that region, and we may still end up with control in that region. We'll just have to see how everything plays out. Trump said that they will control the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I think that they knew that that was the linchpin. And again, I've been talking about this for a whole year, longer than a year, really, 2 years, and 20 days was when I put the original domino theory out. And in the original video, I talked about the Strait of Gibraltar because that's what Jim Rickards had talked about when he consulted with the Fed and everybody on currency wars in 2014. And then I pivoted, actually probably within about 4 months to the Strait of Hormuz after I made that original video, because I saw that was going to be the choke point. So I've been talking about this for a long time. And then to see it come to reality, pretty telling. But all that being said, I do think it is to restructure power and wealth and market influence for sure. And global powers are, fighting over those dynamics in order to be able to make sure that they all have some say-so in how things move forward. Roughnet says, where the heck are you at? I can't stop staring at your background. You're not wrong, dude. I am here in San Diego. I am attending a Mastermind event that I was invited to. I'm going to speak at on Thursday this week. Maybe it's Wednesday that I'm speaking. They were nice enough to book me a hotel room, which I really do appreciate. But it is not the normal type of place that I stay in. So this is what we got. Because when I landed and showed up here, this is the situation. I may be in a different environment come Wednesday, but unfortunately, with the timing of everything, this is where we're at. All right. We got Snowzar. They say, Jake, forget the stablecoin yield issue on the Clarity Act. There is zero chance that Donald J. Trump is signing anything that prevents him or his family from directly profiting from crypto in office. Thoughts? I I mean, they've already made a bunch of money. And they know when they tweet on Truth Social that it's going to move markets. Is that market manipulation? Is that insider trading? Yeah, I think so. But again, is the market manipulated anyway? Yeah. Do big players do it all the time? Yeah. Do they get fined for it? Sometimes. I'll say this. There sure were a lot of people that were out there telling me that, Trump would never let oil skyrocket. The Strait of Hormuz is never going to get shut down. I haven't heard a peep from those people since all this played out. They've just magically gone away. So to say that he won't do anything that's going to, not benefit him and his family, I don't think most people look, people are self-interested. Okay. I'm cynical. I understand that. However, I do think that there's a much larger game being played here, and that the U.S. remaining the major superpower is the ultimate goal over self-interest for Trump and his family. Now, a lot of time they align those self-interest, which again, that's how I play the game. I don't like zero-sum games. I want everybody to win. So I always try to align what we're doing with whoever we're working with. And that's how partnerships work. When things become, at odds, and somebody sits across the table from you instead of on the same tide, and your interests are disaligned, that's when things get wonky. So I think Trump does a good job of aligning his family's interest with America's interest. And that tends to bode pretty well for the profitability of their family. So all that being said, I wouldn't put it past him to sign whatever he needs to get across the line in order for this to work out in America's favor. We've got Truth Altitude. It says, Jake, how is crypto in cold storage treated in a bankruptcy? What are legitimate ways individuals structure assets in advance to protect them properly? They would be treated just like any other property or investment. You would be able, somebody could subpoena for the record of those assets on your crypto exchanges. They would be able to figure out, where you're holding them. If you say I lost my keys in a boating accident, depending on who the creditor is, they could subpoena the manufacturer of the wallet and get the keys. If it's the U.S. government or somebody else. But in a bankruptcy, they are treated as a capital asset, same as any other investment or capital asset would be. In order to be able to structure those, ideally, you're going to set up some type of structure that has creditor protection. And if that's an LLC, you want to maintain your corporate veil, not commingling funds. You're going to keep separation of assets. You're going to do your board resolutions and meeting minutes and all the stuff that you would have if you were operating a legitimate company, because you are operating a legitimate company. A trust, so revocable trust isn't going to do much for you. There's no EIN, there's no creditor protection for that. If you set up an irrevocable trust, sure, that's got its own EIN. You're going to have a separation of control there, though. You're going to have a trust protector. You're going to have a distribution trustee. It's going to take 2 years to season in that creditor protection, depending on what jurisdiction you're filing that irrevocable trust in, or that asset protection trust. If you get your assets offshore, you could go to the Cook Islands. That's the most secure. It's never been penetrated even by the U.S. government, but you're going to lose a lot of control of the assets if you're doing it that way. So just be aware, it's kind of a give and take. Most people that we work with, they keep a portion of the assets in their taxable estate, whether that's inside of an LLC that they manage and own, and then they take up another portion of that and they'll move it out of their taxable estate and move it into an irrevocable trust, while the cost basis or the price of the asset is still low, so that they can be within the gift tax threshold here in the U.S., not use a huge portion of that. So again, I know enough to be dangerous. I would speak with an estate planner, somebody that's familiar with digital assets. If you want to work with our group, we're happy to make referrals or use our internal team. You can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and schedule a time with Dan Plaskett, who's our chief architect for a lot of the estate planning that we do. very familiar with digital assets. He's done hundreds of trusts, probably more than that over his lifetime. He's been doing this for 45 years. Not all those are for digital assets, obviously, but Christina is another one. She's another one of our attorneys. She's barred there in Wyoming. She does great work. And then we also have a ton of referrals that we can make for you. So we'd love to work with you on that if that's something you're interested in. And a cold wallet can be inside the trust. We use institutional custody at Anchorage. That makes it a lot easier to be able to have your distribution trustee on the account to be able to co-sign, because it's a multi-sig wallet. For a cold wallet, you're going to have to tear the keys in half, after you write them down on a piece of paper and give them half the keys and delete your wallet. Kind of sketchy. You have to reconstitute it, if you want to remove assets or do anything. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But I know family offices that do it that way. So it's not to say it can't be done that way. We just prefer to do it out of institutional custody, where it's a lot more seamless and you can build the governance in that you need. Outdoor Things says, hey, Crypto AU from X here. Did you see that I tagged you in? Did you see what I tagged you in about the Parliament House in Australia? God bless. I missed that. I haven't had a ton of time to hang out on Twitter today, but I will go look at it and respond to it accordingly. Thank you for tagging me in it. I saw that the Bank of Australia raised their interest rates 25 basis points not too long ago at their meeting. Seems like things are okay there in Australia at this time. We got Mach King Randy. He says, hey, Jake, tell folks at Ripple that the Lakers are looking for a jersey patch sponsor. Laker home court is Crypto Arena. That'd be cool. You can tell Ripple just as easy as I can. I just go post on their page. I have some connections there, but I don't have any bearing on where they're going to, sponsor or put some cash. I'll tell you that. Let's see here. We got Crypto Keeper, Mr. Joel. He says, off topic, but I started Retuderide, 2 milligrams a week. Clo, 1 milligram, 5 times a week. Mot-C, 2 milligrams, 5 times a week. Tesamorelin, Ipamorelin, 1 milligram, 5 times a week. Being around bodybuilding, what are your thoughts on all these peptides? I haven't used a ton of peptides. This is off topic, but I'm fine with it every once in a while. I've used a lot of steroids over the years, under medical supervision and under prescription. Peptides, I would speak with a medical professional. We had a gentleman come into the mastermind and talk about all these that you just mentioned here and the different benefits that you can derive from those. You would dose it on body weight. So based on this here, I'm assuming you're probably a 210-pound male. The cadence on this seems a little bit aggressive, just based on the compounds that you provided. I don't know that you need to be doing that 5 times a week. You probably get similar benefits by taking a little bit larger dose on a less frequent basis. A lot of people do microdosing like you're talking about in order to be able to, maintain stable blood levels. I've found it just depends on the half-life of the compound. A lot of people like the Clo deal. That's, some people call it the Wolverine stack. You got, BPC 157, TB 500, and the copper one and something else in there to help you regenerate connective tissue and recover. Retuderide does a great job for retaining muscle tissue while, curbing your hunger and your appetite to be able to lose weight. Mot-C, I'm not as familiar with. I know that the doc that came into the mastermind to talk about peptides did mention that one. Tesamorelin and Ipamorelin for growth hormone production can be great. It can also cause you to be hungrier. A lot of people use GPC. What's the other one? I don't know. There's a bunch of them that stimulate your thyroid to be able to generate more GH for you. Look, we don't know the long-term side effects of these peptides. Steroids, we have over 70 years worth of studies on. You can, look up what to do, what the effects are going to be. I don't know what the long-term effects of these peptides are. There are people that have taken GH for a long time that have the majority of these peptides built into that. Peptides tend to be, fragments of the GH hormone or other hormones that are keys that basically turn on different receptors and do different things in your body. Again, I would seek a medical professional, somebody that's a performance oriented doctor to be able to consult on this stuff and make sure you're making the best decisions for you and your body. But excited to see other people looking for high performance. If you want to compete at a high level, irrespective of if that's in business or whatever else you're doing, you're probably going to be supplementing with something, especially as you age. We did talk about the LLC a little bit earlier, so I wanted to mention this here for you guys. If you do want to work with us to set up the LLC to be able to manage your digital assets and get that creditor protection out of Wyoming, all you got to do is use the discount code 50OFF50OFFDAG LLC. That's 50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end-to-end, corporate veil, EIN, articles of organization, registered agent, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, template for the operating agreement, you name it. We have it all included there for $2,000 there at the website if you use that code. All right. We got Jody Lynn. They say, if that's not a country name, I don't know what is. Jody Lynn's awesome. She says, hey, Jake, asking for a friend. If they have between 18 and 20,000 XRP, is there anything available with the current services you provide to benefit them? We're rolling out an app. So many of y'all may have heard the announcement last week on Thursday. We formally announced our partnership with Uphold, which is awesome. We are, over the next couple weeks, going to be rolling out a white labeled solution of their platform. The trading fees are going to be lower on ours. We've been able to negotiate those down. You're going to be able to manage everything end to end there for your LLC, your trust, all of the other corporate veil services and stuff that we provide will be in the app. A seamless experience. You're going to have a bank account associated with the LLC that you can spin up in the app there. We'll be able to do the credit card, get your cash back in your XRP. We'll have a money market account where you can be able to park your fresh cash, be able to generate somewhere between 3 and 5% interest on that, insured up to $2.5 million. You'll be able to trade your crypto on that exchange. Again, this is all powered by Uphold. This is a Fireblocks instance. It does not have all the same assurances that Anchorage does, right? So it's not bankruptcy remote. It's not insured up to $100 million. A lot of the things that people at Digital Wealth Partners in Anchorage have access to, it's not going to be the same as that, but it does democratize access to our products and solutions to a broader demographic of people. There are no minimums for people signing up on that. And it will be able to hold, a large variety of assets that Anchorage doesn't currently support. You also have staking, which will be an opt-in deal if you want to do that there. And as we roll out more DeFi opportunities that we think are safe and secure, we'll look to mitigate as much risk as we can. They are always going to be more risky than the stuff that we provide over there at Digital Wealth Partners. And again, you should work with a financial advisor to discern whether that's the best decision for you and your financial goals. But that's what we're rolling out here in the next couple of weeks to be able to democratize access and provide, literally no minimum for people to be able to work with us over the long term. So hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully that gets you excited. It gets me excited. That's been the vision the whole time. There's been a lot of people that have been like, you're not for the little guy. I am. Like, I drove a beater car for a long time. I didn't have much money. I didn't have, 2 nickels to rub together when I was young. I've done well for myself up to this point, and I want to be able to lower the ladder and help other people up with me. That's the whole point of the Mastermind. That's everything that we're doing over there. We want to help 1 million people become financially free. And we don't do that by hoarding it for, the really wealthy people. We do that by democratizing access to all these products so that people can, get the benefits. So anyway, love to work with you on that. We will continue to keep you guys updated when we roll that out. Rick says, if a 501c3 holds XRP with DGA, I'm assuming you mean DAG, then do they have to pay tax? Do 501c3s get special options with DAG? So 501c3 is a type of nonprofit. They do not pay taxes. When you donate to a 501c3, you get a tax write-off for that. If you have your own 501c3, there are certain things that you have to do in order to be able to donate to it. You do need a board. There's a lot of regulatory components that are required for a nonprofit. A 501c3 is just one of the many types of nonprofits. Many associations like fraternities are 501c8s. So I would look at the different types of nonprofits that are out there before you make the choice that you're going to just do a 501c3. That's the one that most people are commonly known and look at, but it's not always the best choice. We do manage accounts for nonprofits there at Anchorage. So if you have a nonprofit that has, some XRP or digital assets in it, and you don't necessarily want to sell those for cash to be able to support the nonprofit, you want to be able to use those to generate income that support the nonprofit, we can absolutely work with you to do that. And it is, something that we offer. So as far as special options, it is, you get the tax benefits, but outside of that circumstance and what the other, stipulations are, there are some other, requirements for how you can invest those things inside of a nonprofit. Donor advised funds a bit more aggressive. Same thing with the charitable remainder trust. There's a lot of stipulations around how that has to be structured in order for it to be done the right way and not, breach the fiduciary duty that you have. So just make sure you're working with the right people. Again, Dan Plaskett would be who I would recommend having a conversation with. And all you got to do again is just reach out to our team. Just go to email info@digitalfamilyoffice.io and ask for Dan Plaskett. The Real Coomer says, "Hey Jake, hope you're doing well." Thank you, man. Hopefully you and your family are doing well as well. Always looking forward to Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm excited about that, man. Thank you. I get a lot of fulfillment from this. I enjoy coming on here and talking to you guys, and you always ask great questions. So thank you for taking the time out. Any more insight into the BlackRock ETF, and you see the explosion of refinery in Texas impacting anything? Potentially, look, anything that impacts oil being exported or the supply chain, it's going to have effects on things. I don't think it's a huge effect. Again, the Strait of Hormuz, about 20 or 30% of the global oil supply moves through there. You don't get more of an impact than that. Right? Like, it's not going to matter what refinery or whatever you blow up or has a fire. Shutting down that trade route is absolutely the highest impact, highest leverage choke point in the world, as far as, price of oil globally. Now, as far as the BlackRock ETF, I don't know when that's going to happen. I think that it will be at a very opportune time, based on what Steve at Canary Capital has said, probably Q4 this year. But depending on global macroeconomic circumstances and other factors, could happen much sooner. We'll just have to see. We got Long Shots. He says, grateful Carbon One member. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the group. He says, could they be holding reverse carry trade back until global strategic goals? Oh, we already did this one. Sorry about that. Sometimes it kicks me up in the chat here. We are almost an hour in. I'm going to go ahead and go all the way to the bottom down here. So if you haven't put in a super chat and you do want to, ask one, I would go ahead and do it, because I'm going to work my way back up from the bottom. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes here. Anybody else that wants to do a super chat, going once, going twice, gone. All right. Let's see here. Ricky Smith. Again, not sure if you're the same Ricky Smith I went to elementary school with. She was a nice lady, but I haven't talked to her in a long time. So maybe this is a gentleman. Probably is a gentleman. He says, what's up? In full-scale adoption scenario, who becomes the exit liquidity retail investors or institutions and how should holders position themselves accordingly? How do I answer this? So pump and dumps are what you're talking about. And that is not really the institutional adoption of these protocols. That is complete speculation and tulip bubbles, where people manipulate markets and wrong foot people, and it's a zero-sum game. I think that could play out for Bitcoin and Ethereum under certain circumstances if Tether has some problems, which I think it will. I think that those could be impacted significantly, and there could be some type of rug pull on those by the institutions. I think that they will funnel that liquidity into other digital assets in order to be able to drive them to the prices where they can start using them and de-risk from their positions. Those assets might include, but might not be limited to, XRP, HBAR. I don't know how they would do XLM because there's no ETFs for that yet. Same thing with XDC, no ETFs for that yet. Both XRP and HBAR both have ETFs. Solana has ETFs. So I think that that's where the liquidity will be funneled to when it's removed from those other assets, like you're talking about here. And I do think that, there will be some significant downside for people that are holding potentially. And again, I don't want to be right about this. I want people that are holding Bitcoin and ETH to make a bunch of money and for me to be wrong. Just full transparency on this. But I think both of those could lose some significant liquidity when they see this rotation. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but that's my 2 cents on the question. Bet Vegas, Nevada, they say, will Uphold app be phone and or desktop, Apple and Windows? So originally it will be a web app that will be on your desktop. But over time we have hired a app engineer. She is from Gemini. So if you ever use the Gemini app, I would expect that ours will operate kind of like that, just because that's where she came from and cut her teeth and has done a good job. So we do plan to launch it on a phone because we want it to be mobile native. But at the start, it will just be desktop until we roll that out later this year. Truth of Hearts, KT Baby, what's going on? She says, had a meeting with Laughlin today to go over my LLC, but do we need to worry about the setup with them anymore? Just wait, God bless. Just operate business as usual. We are migrating away from Laughlin over the next 2 or 3 weeks as we roll this app out. Could take a little bit longer than that. They've agreed, it's amicable. It's not like it's a bad situation. We're just moving all this in-house because we want to streamline everything and not have so much fragmentation with so many different partners. We want it in one unified application that we have control over. And we want to make sure that the client experience is seamless and as integrated as possible. But yeah, no frictions. Just continue as normal with them until you hear otherwise. We will be sending out emails to everybody that have set up an LLC over the years with us to be able to upload, and create their account on the app once it's rolled out. So, until you get that email, just sit back and business as usual. Michael, thank you for the super chat. No question, but I appreciate it. We've got Trish. She says, I think BG123 is Brad Garlinghouse. I don't think it's Brad. I think Brad is the knight in the riddles. I don't think he is the bear. Just again, tinfoil hat for you guys. Don't put any weight on this, by the way. No weight on this. BG123 in the riddles is always a jester. Now, he wears a bunch of different hats over the years when they put out the different riddles. But at its core, I think the bear is the jester or the fool. New Year's Day used to be April 1st until like the 1500s. So does that have any corollary? Again, same thing with tomorrow being 985 days since, XRP got its clarity. There's lots of things that you can weave a tapestry of like a narrative, if you will. I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to point things out that are interesting, and you guys can come to your own conclusions. And if things happen, maybe there's a correlation there. Don't know. We got 6 days. WED, they say uploaded all blockchain fund updates from the largest banks and institutions, Clarity Act, and historical data into blockchain crypto traded Claude, showing Ondo as extraordinarily attractive side XRP. Thoughts? I think so too. I think Ondo is great. I don't hold any Ondo. Again, like I've told you guys before, I only hold XRP. I have like a couple grand in hash, which is actually down at this point. That's my long-term flyer, and everything else I just continue to funnel into XRP, continue to dollar cost average. So, but my business partner, Max Avery, he has a bunch of Ondo. He's got HBAR. He's diversified across a bunch of different assets. And he puts out content on all of those assets. So if you want to go look at HBAR, you want to go look at Ondo, you want to go look at a lot of the other digital assets that are out there, I would encourage you guys to go subscribe to his channel, Max Avery, the real Max Avery. He does a great job of breaking things down. And if you're looking for content outside of XRP, he's a great channel to go check out. D Crypto 602 says, "Hey Jake, longtime fan, first time caller. Say hi to the tea lady." Thank you, brother. He says, "Is Fuzzy Bear a Ripple OG? Have you looked into fuzzy meme coins on the XRPL?" I don't know. Look, I'll just say it this way. Again, I get my tinfoil hat on and talk about this stuff, but like, there's a lot of schizos on the internet, just being real, that have way too much free time on their hands for whatever reason. Not saying that account is at all, by the way. They could absolutely have worked at Ripple in the past. I have no clue. I just take it with a grain of salt. I haven't done enough research on that account to discern one way or the other. But I'm just saying, I've seen a lot of other accounts out there that have launched meme coins and done things, and there's some legitimate ones. There's some good people that just see an opportunity and they see something cool and they want to launch a meme coin in the XRPL, which I think is great. But there are some other ones out there that are maybe not the best. So I haven't done enough research on Fuzzy and that account to have any opinion. It could absolutely be the best thing since sliced bread and definitely a Ripple OG and know everything that's going on, or it could be a schizo online that has no clue. I don't know. So again, no offense to this person. I'm sure that they'll watch this later and people be like, this guy said you're a schizo. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I have no way to discern one way or the other, and I don't have enough information. I've never researched that account, so I don't know. And I would love to believe that they are an insider and they're an OG, and everything that they're giving you is, ironclad gold. But until I go look at it, I wouldn't be able to speak on it one way or the other. Let's see here. I'm scrolling. Oh, there's a super chat. Here we go. I think we already went over this one, actually. I may have gotten through all the super chats already, which is unusual on a Wednesday, on a Monday night. We got another one here. This gentleman says, "Hey, Jake, hope you and the family are doing well. Any news on the Clarity Act? Also, the Bank of Japan rate hike." So we've been over both of these, but I'll touch on them again. Appreciate the super chat. So Clarity Act, it seems like things are progressing. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of good things out of Capitol Hill. Patrick Witt said before Easter is what he was optimistic for. You've had Brian Garlinghouse also coming out today saying that there's a lot of traction for Clarity, potentially also before Easter. He didn't give that exact timeline. He said toward the end of April. If they don't get it passed here in the next 30 to 40 days, I don't know that they're going to. And the reason for that is many of the politicians are going to be focused on midterms, and it might end up being like Q1 of 2027 when we see the Clarity Act passed. Now, the SEC and the CFTC are working together to be able to provide guidance for the digital assets, and I do think that the banks and institutions just need that. They will be fine to be able to move forward with the guidance from both of those regulatory bodies, irrespective of the Clarity Act. So we'll have to see. I don't know if it's going to pass or not. When I was on Capitol Hill last year advocating for the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, when the Genius Act was passed in the middle of the summer, many of the politicians, men and women, said that the Clarity Act was going to be pushed to 2026. And I said that the whole year. And everybody was like, no, that's not going to happen. And here we are, a quarter of the way through 2026, and we still don't have the Clarity Act. So I'm hopeful, just like everybody else is on the Clarity Act, but I don't think we need it. And I don't think XRP needs it. And then as far as the rate hike from the Bank of Japan, at some point, we're starting to see more credit funds halt and limit withdrawals. Not good. That means that credit is drying up. That means that banks are restricting lending rates. That means that people won't be able to refinance things or get access to liquidity when they need it. And we're going to see defaults start to rise significantly in the near future. And the people that are withdrawing money, excuse me. Oh, geez. The people that are withdrawing money from these funds, they're seeing fractured liquidity in the market, and they are looking to move out of these credit funds because they believe that the defaults are going to come. So I think we're pretty close here to be, like I've said this before, I think we're between a rock and a hard place. If they don't lower interest rates here in the U.S., things are going to get bad here. And if they don't raise interest rates there in Japan, things are going to get bad there. And they know that if they move either direction, it's going to be cataclysmic for markets. And they're going to have to move to, distributed ledger technology to be able to move to real-time settlement and start the flywheel that kicks the economy back on again. Because that's really the only way out of the situation. And a lot of them don't want to do it because it's going to disintermediate them, and they haven't adopted things. NASDAQ partnered with Talos this morning. Another big announcement. I don't know if you guys know who Talos is or not. We've talked to them a couple of different times. They provide the back-end trading for options and straddles and a bunch of the other ways to be able to hedge and mitigate risk in markets for those that are trading them in hedge funds and other large institutions. They're tied into everybody, okay? And if you're going to tokenize the back end of the stock market and stocks themselves, you definitely need Talos integrated. And so for NASDAQ to do that, I think you're going to see New York Stock Exchange and the other exchanges also come out and say that they're doing that. Big deal for them. Excited for Talos in that announcement. So yeah, I think we're pretty close to the actual tokenization of the stock market here in 2026. I do think that'll probably be late Q2 or early Q3 when that happens. Back-end settlement could happen sooner, but I think the tokenization of stocks may be, in the time range that I just mentioned. Roughnet says Diet Coke. This is what happens when the tea lady isn't there. By the way, I'm a woman. Oh, okay. Very nice. Sorry about that. You keep calling me a guy. I apologize. I need to be more gender neutral with my comments. Roughnet seems like a little bit more aggressive name, but I will make sure to remind myself that you are a female moving forward, and appreciate the super chat and the kind words and the support. Tim Dixon says, hey, Legend, I noticed you keep talking about inflation in Japan, but inflation keeps dropping in Japan according to them. How? Thanks for all that you do. I haven't looked at their CPI, but I call it the CP lie because it doesn't factor in the majority of the economics that were actually in that equation back in the 1970s. So if you're not factoring in housing, you're not factoring in gas, you're not factoring in food, if it's just predicated on a few things, you can easily manipulate that to make it look like there's less inflation than there really is. I don't know if Japan's doing the same thing or not. I haven't looked at their inflation numbers, but with energy cost rising 30%, there cannot not be inflation. Like everything's going to cost more to move around. Everything's going to cost more to manufacture. Homes are going to cost more to heat. Like there's all of these things that require gasoline and other energy. If energy costs go up, that's going to translate to higher costs across the board. So whether that's an immediate thing or there's a delayed situation, which is what I think is happening, then, that's what I would say to that. I think, they can say whatever they want, but in reality, they know that inflation is creeping up. Ricky, we already did this one. We'll go on down. And if we don't get enough super chats, I'm going to go over here to TikTok and start answering some questions. What are credit funds? So private credit is a big industry. If you can't get funding from a traditional lender, you would go to a private credit fund. Let's say you're buying an airplane hangar. It's not a normal piece of real estate. You would probably go to somebody that's going to lend on collateral that's outside the scope of residential real estate. Maybe you need a commercial property loan, but it's, there's something unique about the property. You're probably going to go to a private credit fund. You need a business loan that's not an SBA loan and you can't get traditional lending. You might go to a private credit fund for that. So things that are outside the wheelhouse of traditional lenders, that's where you're going to go to a private credit fund, and they tend to charge pretty significant interest rates for that. Somewhere between 11 and 20% a lot of the time. And that's how they're able to generate outsized returns for their investors. Now, the downside on that is if they didn't underwrite the risk correctly and the collateral is also being devalued and people start missing payments, now the recourse on that becomes not, less than what they loaned on it potentially. Maybe they're doing 50% LTV or 60% LTV. If you see a collapse in prices and people are starting to default, that's where things can go sideways very quickly. So it is risky. While the markets are good and they're lowering interest rates and things like that are working, and there's access to liquidity, then there's no issues. But when you start to see the economy contracting and people start to not be able to make payments, that's when private credit funds start to lose money. And that's why people are starting to pull out of them now, because they see that on the horizon. Ricky Smith says, no, Mr. Jake, I'm not a woman. I'm a man from California. If I knew you, I would definitely be trying to work with you. If I knew you, I would definitely be trying to work with you. I'm in Cali right now. I'm in San Diego here for the next couple days. So I don't know if you're around here or not, but happy to meet up. Truth of Hearts says, by the way, cutest Yoshi teacup at Walmart, tea lady, has to get it for you. It's a big egg white with green dots. You got to get it. That is all. Okay. A lot of people enjoy the different cups. And so, obviously if I'm at home, we will start to rotate in new cups for you guys. We've got, this person says, will XRP jump to 100 or closer to 1,000? My legal team has barred me from giving price predictions. Not able to do that. So I'm just going to talk about some different circumstances that might play out in macroeconomics and what might lead to that type of price appreciation. With the supply shock, I'm just going to point to numbers that have already happened. Okay, so on Kraken and on Upbit, there was enough volume that pushed the price to $91 and $100. The chart did gap up to those amounts. When we see the first move on XRP, because I think there'll be a couple different moves on XRP, I think $100, $50 to $100 is probably where there's enough air in the chart that it'll move to. And again, that's predicated on those previous, moves happening on those two exchanges. So there's been glitches of $5,000, $10,000. I don't really count those. I don't think those are legitimate. These other ones were trades that registered. So, I tend to think probably on the lower end of that spectrum, but as, there's more demand and FOMO and less supply, I think that you could easily gap up much higher than that as well. All right, we did that one. We got Roscoe. Good to see you. He says, you missed my super chat. Okay, well, let me go back up here, Roscoe, and I will find it for you. And I apologize. I can't search this deal. I wish I could. I wish I could just search it for you. I could if I was on YouTube. If I just broadcast on YouTube, then I can limit this to just super chats, and it would make it super clean. But we use Streamlabs, and so because of that, it makes it a little more difficult. And sometimes I do occasionally miss super chats. Let me see if my wife posted any. Nope, she doesn't have them over there in my inbox. I swore she told me that I missed some last week, though. I don't see you, Roscoe. I'm trying to find it, though. Travis, Presto, Roughnet jumped my case because I was calling her a man, which I appreciate. I like to know. That way I can make sure I'm calling you by the right name or the right sex. There's Jody Lynn again. What a country name. That's awesome. Not seeing it, Roscoe. I'm sorry. If you want to repost it down below, I will grab it. And you don't have to super chat it the next time. Just post it down below and I'll grab it. John, he says, missed mine too. So here's the other thing. If you posted before this goes live, I'm not going to see it. Just so you guys know. So if you come on here and post it earlier in the day, when I click into this thing, it erases any super chats that were done before that. I wish it wasn't that way. I'm not doing it on purpose. I would love to answer all the super chats, believe me. But if I missed it, and John, if you want to just post yours below again, also, I will grab both of them. Let's see here. I don't see. We got Rockin' HL. I'll grab this one. He says, any thoughts on setting up a CPA team to add to a list of offerings with DAG? We already have it, my man. We will do your taxes. We are not tax preparers ourselves, but we have multiple people that we work with in order to be able to facilitate that. So, just reach out. Happy to make recommendations on that front. And then if you want the tax service, we actually have it on our platform. We have a referral agreement with one of the providers that we work with. And you can actually use the tax service there on the platform. I think it's $500 to get started. Cyberback81 says, Cyberback here, Carbon Wonder. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the community. How important is it to lawmakers to get the Clarity Act passed over being reelected? The mods rock. Thank you, man. Shout out to the mods again. Y'all aren't going to like my answer to this. I think we're going to move toward a technocracy. If you don't know what that term means, I would encourage you to go look it up. Just check it out on Wikipedia. It's basically where scientists and engineers and other people that have the competency and the capability to be able to make good decisions are moved into power. And we kind of move away from a democracy that we currently live under. I know that's a huge paradigm shift. I know that that's very different. There's a lot of radical ideas in a technocracy. I would encourage you to go check it out. It's an interesting paradigm. But all that being said, I think that we'll make it through midterms, irrespective. And those that have voted on the Clarity Act, yay or nay, I don't think it's going to matter. I think people are going to vote for whatever is best for them in their neck of the woods, and they'll have discernment to do that whether they pass it or not. Trying to see if these other people posted this, what they said for super chats. I got a bunch of them here. Roscoe and John, if you guys want to post in the chat there where your super chat was earlier, I will try to grab them. XRP Maxi, love that. That's awesome. They say, hey Jake, are you more bullish now than any other time in XRP journey? Do you think we are set by the end of June 2026? I think this year. Again, I'm just going to go quote Monica Long. She says that XRP and the XRPL will have full-scale institutional adoption here in 2026. For that to happen, XRP has to be a very high price. Missed one. Okay, well, if y'all will post them in the chat here for any of those that I missed, I will try to get them and just repost it. You don't have to super chat it. This person's asked, is the Laughlin event still happening? Yeah, their event's still happening. I just won't be attending that event in May. Scooter Smith. Thank you, Scooter. Appreciate you for the kind words and the support, my man. Thank you for taking time out of your Monday to come hang out. Roughknit again. She says, touche. Roughknit is a trademark we have on my business. My husband invented, so no offense taken. Very cool. It's a cool name. There's that one. This one says, I missed your super chat also. I'm sorry. Like I said, if you guys will post them down below, I will try to get them. Okay, missed super chat. Here we go. They say, Jake, I know you don't give me financial advice, but my friend is offering me either a Bitcoin or cash value of a Bitcoin. Well, it's not going to matter which one you take. It's still income, unless it's a gift, and they're going to have to file a 709 if they do gift it to you, whether that's a Bitcoin or the cash of the Bitcoin. If you got the Bitcoin and you immediately trade it for something else and it's at the same cost basis, you don't have to worry about the tax implications. So again, just make sure that they file a 709 if it's a gift to you, and you're not gonna have to worry about it. John, my wife was nice enough to find your super chat and she texted to me. So here it is. He says, hi to you and the tea lady. If XRP price appreciation, if not XRP price appreciation, then what? Instant settlement is essential for the future of the world finance. It's got to happen. Is this not true? It is true. And that's like, there's not another investment that I think is the end all be all and like safest bet out there. Again, this is not financial advice. To your point, I should probably give my disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. Anything said here is for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always consult with a CPA, attorney, or financial advisor before making any financial decisions, legal decisions, or tax decisions. All the opinions that I'm expressing are my own opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners, which is the SEC registered RIA. I do own the majority of equity in both of those businesses. However, I am not licensed myself, and so I cannot provide you financial advice. But yeah, I mean, for me, that's why my position where I am, and that's my thesis. I think that XRP is the surest bet because I agree with you. I do think that that's, where the world's going to go. Epic says, my question was, do you think X Money and Cross River Bank will use XRPs, will be on the XRP's switches that will push the price? I think the price has to be pushed and then they can start using it. And I do think that X Money will settle through either Hyperledger, XRP, or Doge. Cotton Clark says twice now. I'm going to get to it, man. I'm sorry. He says, with all the reverse carry trade stuff, how does this impact the Nostro Vostro accounts that's $25 trillion just waiting to be liquid? There are two independent things. Again, once there's enough liquidity in XRP, they can start settling that real time. They don't need to park that money. and Swift can adopt it, and they can remove the Nostro accounts and pass all of that cash back to the banks. She also found Roscoe. Sorry, I can't find these. My wife is nice enough to find them for me. She says, or Roscoe says, Mr. Muscles, appreciate that. He says, can you please flex your opinion, not prediction, on the price of XRP conservatively by 2030? Thank you in advance. I've said this a lot of times. Again, by 2030, I think 80% of the global economy will be tokenized. And if 80% of that value is on chain, I think that XRP could easily be 6 digits by 2030. By the end of 2030, 6 digits. So that's over $100,000 a piece. I know how crazy that sounds. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm just some dude on the internet. That's just my opinion. Do your own research. Are we there yet? Says Abs from Good Evening Crypto Show showed a Swift integration with Thunes. Does this link them to XRP? Don't know what Thunes is. I'll have to go watch that episode by Abs. Love him and Johnny. Shout out to Good Evening Crypto. Appreciate those guys. If you don't watch their show, I highly recommend. They always put out really good information. Here Roscoe again, super chatted again. You didn't have to super chat again. I'm sorry, dude. Appreciate you for being part of the mastermind and for your question. And again, 6 digits is what my guess is. Again, educated guess by the end of 2030. Faith Fortitude, cool name, FFF. They say, did you see my 2 super chats? Maybe I missed it. I did not see your super chats. This person says, we already did that one. If you want to list it below, I will get them. This one says, oh, thank you. All right. They say, Mr. Super Chat, JC, with the Uphold integration, will there be a modern dashboard for DWP clients? Can you touch on that and the best features to look forward to? Great question. So we will be combining Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group and that whole portal over the next 3 to 6 months. We're actually going to consolidate the entire brand under just Digital Ascension Group. And so with all that being said, you'll have access over the long term, not day one. There are going to be 2 separate platforms day one. But over the long term, you'll have access to institutional custody at Anchorage and the Fireblocks instance there at Uphold. All of it will be in one view. You have your bank account. You'll be able to, stake, do DeFi, participate in the other products and solutions that we have, all out of one seamless application. But again, it takes time. We have some stuff that's fragmented that we're going to be able to integrate. And that's the whole point of working with Uphold, to be able to create that partnership and bring that to you guys, is again to democratize access to everything that we're doing and continue to provide as much value as we can. John says, thank you to the tea lady. You're my hero. She's awesome. I will also agree with that. Do I have a black left eye? So actually, I was looking at this blemish earlier. Unfortunately, I do not. I have not hit my face on anything, and nobody has hit me. But I could see how it kind of looks like that in the light here in the hotel room, in the janky hotel room. This person says, thoughts on Japan's inflation down to 1.3, lower than expectations of 1.5. I think that that's a bunch of phooey. I think that is not true. Let's see here. X Money Cross River. I'm just trying to make sure, if you did put a super chat in here and I missed it, I apologize. I try to get all of them, but sometimes I miss them. Here's the other one. He said, with the reverse carry trade, how does the impact of the Nostro accounts? We did that one. All right. Probably going to wrap it a little bit early tonight because I'm hungry. and I want to go get some food before everything shuts down here in San Diego. We got CGL Investor. He says, hey, Jake, the big baller. Appreciate the kind words. With how the world economy rests after so many years, how long do you think XRP will be relevant for the future? So it's about 50,000 years until all the XRP will be burnt. As we move to different type of civilization, and where we operate on, energy from the sun and some other stuff, and you need intergalactic settlement and processing of payments between, multiple economies. I think that it'll continue to stay relevant for probably a couple thousand years. The cyclical pattern that we've had for how our monetary systems worked over the past 500 years, I think is transitioning. And I think that those that have a significant allocation, whatever that means to you for XRP, will be in the upper echelon of whatever caste system we're moving into. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's going to be around a long time. I think that it will continue to be used far beyond, my lifetime. I think, my great grandkids will still be utilizing this on the back end. Like imagine email, right? Or text message or any of these other, the phone's been around for 100 years, a little more than 100 years. As long as the technology is relevant and whatever application, people are going to be communicating, people are going to be transmitting value, people are going to be doing all these things. I think this is a huge upgrade. And I do think that these protocols could subsist or persist for the next 1,000 years. Rocket 99 XRP says, bro, you said we would be hearing from Elon Musk talking about XRP soon. You still think that? I sure do. I do think that Elon will come out and talk about XRP in the not too distant future. Will we see 50 cent XRP during the pullback? Highly unlikely. Don't believe so. Again, like you can set limit orders there. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you catch a falling knife and make a bunch of money. But I'm not betting on that. We got Beyond Blessed. I love the name. Say, hey, legend. With the extra time, I've been able to bag more XRP than I thought I could have. When I get the LLC, do I report that value I'm transferring in or at the cost basis of each DCA? You would do it at the DC at the cost basis. So you'd average, that total amount, and that's what you would contribute that value at into the LLC would be your cost basis for the total amount you're contributing. OZO says, hey, Jake, so say you do borrow against your XRP holdings. What would be a good route to maintain what you borrowed per month aside from, say, work income? What would be a good route to maintain what you borrowed per month? I'm assuming you're talking about making the interest payments. So most of the time when you leverage an asset, you're going to take that value and put it to work somewhere else to be able to generate more than whatever you're using to service the debt. So as an example, you buy a rental property, okay? And you rent that property out, right? But you might have a note on it. You put a down payment on it. Let's say, we're just going to go easy math here. These are not accurate numbers, but I'm just going to give you an example. You bought a $100,000 property, which you can't find one nowadays, but just play the game with me, okay? It's on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at, call it 4%, which also isn't the interest rate anymore. With taxes and insurance, you're going to be $1,000 a month. Maybe a little less than that, maybe $800 a month. You rent it out for $1,200 a month, right? So you're using that asset to be able to generate more income, to be able to service the debt, and then still have a padding or margin on top of that. You would do the same thing with your XRP or your other digital assets. Ideally, whatever you're lending against them at, you would also be able to put them to work in some capacity to be able to generate enough income off of those to service that debt, pay that note off over time, and have some extra for yourself. That would be the way that I do it. Or you would take that money that you borrowed and put it into something that generates more than enough to be able to service the debt. So you buy a company, you buy a car wash, you buy an asset that generates enough cash flow or ROI to be able to, so let's say, borrowed $100,000. Your monthly payment's $1,000 a month because it's 12% interest over the year. Just, again, not perfect, but play the game with me. And then you take that $100,000 and you go put it in something that generates 20% a year. Maybe you put it in a private credit fund that pays 15%. Okay. You're going to get a monthly distribution or quarterly distribution out of that credit fund. You're going to take whatever you need to service the debt, and then you keep the spread. So you're going to make an extra 3% because you borrowed at 12 and you're making 15, right? That's the way that I see a lot of people are going to be able to, borrow against it, service the debt, and have some extra income. If you do it, and if you do it against a life insurance policy, then you don't have to ever have to pay it back. Jayhawk Nation says, Rock Hawk Jayhawk, any tickets available for the San Diego Mastermind? How do I get tickets to still available? It's going to sound bigoty or egotistical. It's invite only. It is kind of like the speakeasy of masterminds. I was nice enough, one of the people I know was nice enough to make an introduction to this gentleman. He's having me come here and speak to a bunch of other eclectic people that have, invented cool things or are billionaires or run large tech companies. There's a wide variety of people that are attending this week. But unfortunately, it is not open to the public. There are no tickets. Life with Mikey says, do you think anyone would have the reverse carry trade? Do you think everyone would have the reverse carry trade priced in by now? Does Ripple know they are the solution? No and yes. I'm going to grab a couple more. Oh, man. You guys are... All right. No more super chats. Cut them off. Cody says, I theorize that your theory is theorying. Okay. Freaking Spiders says, hey, Jake, would you still do YouTube once XRP moves? Yeah, I'll still be around. I'm not going anywhere. We'll just talk. We'll kind of pivot. And we'll talk more about, macroeconomics, where the market's headed, AI, other progressive technologies, other investments I'm looking at and making. Again, just want to provide financial education and business resources for people that might not know what, is out there and want to learn about estate planning and taxes and all that stuff. So I'm sure that the narrative will change a little bit and the questions will change a little bit, and we'll still be here and answering them for you. The House Junkie says, I'm a social mastermind member. Awesome, dude. Glad to have you in the group. If XRP goes to $100 rapidly and we onboard with you, how will we be able to pay taxes on that since most of us have more crypto than cash? You aren't selling it, so you won't have any tax implications for anything that you aren't selling. We got Dr. Dan. He says, I feel very antsy waiting, and I can't imagine how you must feel. Tell me, dude. If you can, could you share any details or conversations you've had that have given you the level of conviction in XRP? It's been an amalgamation of stuff over the years. So just for context, I've been here for 6 years at this point. I've held XRP that whole time. I wasn't consolidated in XRP for the first 2 years of that, but for the past 4 years, I've been completely consolidated into XRP. Over that duration, again, we've talked with Mastercard, Visa, R3, Ripple, you name it, large financial institution, Bank of America, Citi, Goldman. Not all of them have been about XRP, but I tend to drop things in those conversations and get their visceral response. chief risk officer for very large banks, 3-letter agencies, lots of them. We have a fair number of NDAs. So if I could share specifics on those, I would love to. Unfortunately, I cannot. And I know like that sounds like I'm trying to evade the question, or like I'm, hiding things or trying to be mysterious. I'm not. I honestly would really love to just give you guys the full meal deal on all of it. And maybe one day in memoirs and stuff, I'll be able to. But, again, I've just been very blessed to be in certain rooms and have conversations with certain people. I feel like I'm an Indian on the campground, and the shamans come out of the teepee every once in a while, and they give me some information, and they don't ever give me the whole story, but I've talked to enough of the shamans that I've been able to piece it together. All right, we are going to grab, well, maybe I got them all. Yeah, I think we got them all. So again, I'm going to wrap it a little early tonight. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out to come hang out with me. If you need anything as far as taxes, if you need insurance, if you need estate planning, if you need wealth management, we do everything end-to-end at Digital Ascension Group, all the private client services that you expect from a multifamily office, but we work with individuals that have significant allocation to crypto, whatever that means for you. Oh, she sent me, I've got two more super chats here. So before I go, I will answer these. Faith Forward says, are you aware of anyone cashing in with your likeness? I replied to a post and someone said they'd help move my money from my decent wallet. Fishy AF. Made an appointment with Jamie tomorrow. Beware. There's a lot of imposters out there. Unfortunately, we report somewhere between 500 and 1,000 accounts every single day. The people that are working to impersonate me and steal stuff from you guys are the same people that defrauded Coinbase of about $400 million. They're sophisticated. They're good. If it seems fishy, or I wish I had the time to comment and respond to you guys and go back and forth on social media. I don't. I will answer stuff on Twitter. If you DM me on Twitter, I tend to get back to people there. I will never reach out to you. If anybody comments on my post and says, hey, DM me here, or WhatsApp or Telegram or any of that other crap, it's not me. I wish I had time to do that. I don't. So yeah, stay away, stay vigilant. Report, please, if you see anybody that is spamming you, or it seems sketchy, or an email seems out of place. Make sure you double check the website and everything. They get really creative. So appreciate you pointing that out. And again, be vigilant out there. There are a lot of fake jakes, unfortunately. Faith Forward also says, besides you, who are legitimate and ethical people online to listen to about crypto? Pray all is well with you. Thanks for all that you do. God bless. There's a lot of good people out there. Cashew Nate, I was just on his podcast. He's awesome. Verson and Vandell are awesome. Crypto Dave is awesome. So that's Black Swan Capitalist for Verson and Vandell. There are many of them. There's a lot of different podcasts that I'm on an infrequent basis. Shout out to people that have me on. I appreciate all the support and taking time out to come hang out with me. And have me on the show. Offhand, Crypto Mason is cool. Trying to think of a couple other people just offhand here. God, what's the Spanish gentleman's name? There's a couple different Spanish channels that are great. We were just on the other day on Instagram with a gentleman. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Let me pull it up. I think it's Armando. There's a lot of good people out here, right? And everybody kind of resonates with other people. It just depends. Some people don't like me for whatever reason. That's okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But I would just, get on YouTube and watch a couple. There's some ladies out there on YouTube that do great work. There's a black lady that does really good content. She makes really good. I can't think of her name off the top of my hand. But anyway, I would encourage you to listen to a bunch of people. Don't just listen to me. There's some people that like, my opinions and they watch consistently, but I would encourage you, to venture out, get other opinions in order to be able to put together your thesis. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it. Again, appreciate y'all taking, Kamala. There you go. Kamala Stevens. There she is. Oh, Mickle. How did I forget Mickle? Mickle works for us over there at Digital Wealth Partners. Paul Barron on his podcast frequently. He's awesome. Fran, there you go. Fran's the gentleman. Johnny and Abs, like I said before. Good Evening Crypto. Fran de Olza. He's great. Jamala Stevenson. You guys named them all. Y'all know what's up. So again, would love to see you guys in the mastermind if you feel so inclined. We do a lot more than this. I do share a little bit more there. So if you want a little bit more, I'm a little more candid there in the group. You go to beyondbroke.com and use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar Uchi, the first month for $2 there in the group. If you need the LLC, again, we'd love to work with you on that side. Just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50OFF, LLC. And last but not least, if you have at least $100,000 in digital assets and you want institutional custody, access to an advisor, and all the other benefits that we provide at Digital Wealth Partners, we would love to see you there. You just go to digitalwealthpartners.net and use the contact us form. So again, appreciate you guys for hanging out with me on a Monday. I hope you'll have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week. We will see you all Wednesday. God bless, and we'll see you then.